The display and operation elements. The core items of any visualization are of course the display and operation elements, here called components. They let you operate the functions and give the required feedback information. This paragraph deals with the categories of components, the detailed content of each category, and representative components again in detailed configuration. From the advanced category, we explain especially the following components: slider, RGBW element, HTML chart, dial gauge, matrix element, IP camera. In the IPCC, we have a vast variety of different components for each kind of task you can imagine. These components are grouped according to their general usage in 10 different categories. The categories. The categories 1 through 4 mainly deal with binary controls and feedback information. Only in category 4, status general, there are 2 components suitable also for analog value display. The status indication components. 4 of the other 6 categories deal with special applications like shutter, blind, HVAC, scenes, and entertainment. One category contains all items for navigation, and one comprises of all more advanced and flexible components. Let's have a closer look at the categories now. Switching general. Controls with icons for various switching operations and feedback. Switching miscellaneous. Basically the same as one, but with different usage-specific icons. Switching light. Again, same as 1 or 2, now with some icons especially for lighting purpose. Status general. Here only binary feedback components are listed, with exception of the value display, which can show all value data points as numeric indication. Shutter, blind. Operation elements for sun protection, doors and windows. HVAC. Operation and feedbacks in context with HVAC control. Scenes. Some icons that can be used for the most popular scene control functions. Advanced elements. Analog controls and feedback. Very versatile elements like sliders, gauges, and the so-called matrix element, which is a highly flexible element to be used with multi-stage analog status feedback. Instead of displaying plain values, with the matrix element you can visualize ranges of values graphically. Audio-video. All controls to be used for entertainment electronics control. Navigation, as already shown in previous chapters. All components are pulled from the category registers to the workspace by drag and drop. Make sure to press the left mouse button on the icon, because only the icons are sensitive not the text left of them. The configuration of the elements then is done in the Properties area to the right. There are two kinds of properties, the basic and the individual properties. As their name implies, basic properties are identical for all components. They will be explained now. Individual properties vary, of course, with the type of components and will be explained in the context of the related chapter. Basic properties. They start with the general part. ID is a running index number, automatically created whenever a new element is inserted, thus not changeable. The same applies for the type of element. It is the function identifier. A change wouldn't make sense. Name is the tag of the element, which, for a better recognition later, should be unique in the list of elements that you can see under the page on the left side. If a control element is assigned to an object, the object's name is copied, but in all other cases you must edit the tag manually. Visible, self-explanatory. The element can only be seen if the tick mark is set. Enabled, necessary for control elements. If not ticked, only the status can be seen. You can't operate. Then we have a look at the properties. They vary a little with the selected icon, but are still basics. Show status. Here the value of the element is referred to, not the symbolic indication. In case of a switching icon, the values 0 and 1 will be displayed additionally. In case of a slider, you see the analog value. Can be both the control output or the status feedback. Tooltip and show tooltips. The mouse over pop-up text can be entered and activated here. In the properties, finally, you must establish the link to a process point, which can be a KNX communication object, one or more group addresses, or a virtual object for internal data linking. Notice that a combination of these three process item types is not possible. All process points either can be entered directly, dragged, and dropped from the object or addresses list, or selected from the list when pressing the zoom glass. The existing virtual objects are listed after the KNX objects in both cases. The blue button serves for the creation of new virtual objects, including their properties as for name, data point type, and subtype. In case of float values, the number of displayed decimals can be entered and its start value. This is the same like for the real KNX group addresses. The parcel icon edits the process point, and if one or more group addresses are used for it, you must also define the sending and the read on init group address. A send flag must always be set, like in ETS, even if it is only a status. The red cross deletes the entry. Status settings. These settings vary with the process point types. However, in common, there is always a disconnected and at least two connected status settings. The disconnected status is used to indicate with a certain icon and/or text, color, background, that a link to the KNX object isn't possible at the moment. The connected boxes have the same design properties, plus the values which refer always to the value of the process point which has to be visualized. So for a binary process point, of course, there are the on and off indications, which can be, as mentioned before, the 0 or 1 itself, a text in front or after it, pre- and post-status text, and an icon from the list of components. The text and the background can be configured as for color, alignment, style, and if the icon should be transparent or not. The pre-assigned images still can be altered, since all the internal images and styles are freely accessible. If a customized icon is to be used, you can use the blue arrow buttons to import it. The most popular formats are all supported: bitmap, TIFF, GIF, JPEG, etc. The red cross will delete assigned icons, so that such an element also can be used only with text plus background color. Finally, you find properties for design and style, which again depend on the component type and aren't available for most standard icons. And the layout. In layout you can set width, height and XYZ position, and you can lock it to avoid unintended moves when you work at other objects on the workspace. Components in detail. Switching general, miscellaneous and light. As mentioned above, here only binary control and status elements are available. They are based on only 3 different controls. The send-only buttons, which can send 1 out of 2 values, normally 0 or 1, and show no status change. The toggle buttons with feedback, which send both values alternating and based on the previous status. You must enter the control values under Properties, First and Second Status. And finally, the pure status display without control option. However, if you look more closely, the status icons are actually also disabled toggle buttons. You don't have to worry about the proper icon settings because all components are already properly designed by default. Hint: binary buttons can also be used with analog values, such as 0 and 100%. Toggle button control should be always used with an active feedback. The usage of group addresses is highly recommended instead of KNX objects, because here the read flag can be explicitly set for the status group address, which must be used as second group address in the process point for synchronization purpose. In status general, all pure status displays are grouped, and the simple numeric value status, which can be used for all kind of value indications such as physical measures, dimming values, counters, etc. Here you can see how I design the analog feedback of a carbon dioxide concentration. I open the group address list, put in a filter CO2, filter my results and select the proper group address. Afterwards, I have to design the display options, for example the decimals, the data point type. Here it is a 9.2 float value. Don't worry about the data point type setting here because it is not relevant. You design what you see with the format decimals and with the pre and post status text that you enter as well here. You can see CO2 pre text and the post status text ppm parts per million. In the meantime, I have exported the page, and here you can see how our controls work. You operate the only send buttons and you can see the status change. This is the analog switching value, and here my carbon dioxide concentration indicator. Shutters and blinds. These components differ from the previously described ones only in certain specific properties, that is, all general settings, status information and layout design are identical. The blind and shutter specific properties are to be found here. Most of the controls are also 1-bit single function operations like up or down buttons. They work like the switch buttons. Some of the components, however, are composed of 3 process points, like the sun blind toggle function. All such elements are named short long press in brackets. At first, you have to decide if you want to use the toggle option or a defined behavior up or down. Then you have to assign the controls, group addresses or objects, for short and long button operation, and the distinction timer between short and long operation. The status object requires the true position indication of the actuator and will be shown as a number in the icon if ticked. Important: using the toggle option makes no sense for louvers control, and elements for long button operation usually don't work on mobile devices. Category HVAC. Here you find all HVAC specific elements which differ from the switching categories only by using different icons. Beside this, they are identically designed and operate all on 1-bit process points, so there is nothing more to explain. Category scenes. Scenes can be either called up by 1-bit or by 8-bit commands. The available control elements in this category, therefore, only differ in the icons and the data type which has to be assigned. In case of 1-bit, you must define on or off in status. If an 8-bit scene was chosen, you must enter the scene number -1. This is required because there is no KNX data point type 17 or 18 for 8-bit scene control, only the normal data point type 8-bit unsigned integer. If the scene icons are not matching the desired scene type, you can upload your own graphics as shown before. There are no other special properties to heed. Category Advanced Elements. This group of elements contains almost everything you might have missed so far. There are some simple controls for analog values, like increase, decrease, sliders, a gauge, the 8-bit HVAC operation mode control, the very versatile matrix element, multi-stage fan control, or alarm display. With the so-called advanced element, page changes by value discrimination can be launched. Let us look at some samples. The slider. The slider is designed for both applying continuous changes to all analog values and to show the feedback. Command and feedback can be superimposed. Make sure not to forget the read and the send flag. You can choose between a bar graph or a line with a pointer, and also between vertical or horizontal alignment. The bar graph also can be colored as for the background and the value bar. Finally, also the minimum and maximum limits must be set, especially for huge value ranges when you actually need only a small range, like room temperature settings. The RGBW element. This element joins the three basic colors which are used now very often for mood lighting purpose. It can also add white if a lighting device is designed with an extra white light component like an RGB plus white LED light strip. Accordingly, you have to link 3 or 4 8-bit group addresses for red, green, blue and white. The RGBW element will display a color circle and inside the circle a saturation square, where you then can set the color, its saturation and brightness. As a result of this operation, the 3 color group telegrams will be sent to the KNX actuator, which is very often a DALI gateway. The way of composing a color light mood, however, can also be done via the so-called U value in the light color circle, the saturation, and the brightness. Then it is called HSV control, also using 3 groups, but in a different way. These controls are not yet common with KNX color dimming actuators. Here you see 2 working samples with virtual objects and additional slider control. The RGBW element includes the white color slider if activated and 7 predefined colors. Hint: the RGBW element can show the chosen color, but by default it is hidden behind the icon. To avoid this, you have 2 options. 1. You must completely delete the icon. 2. You must use the icon without background. Then the color will become visible between the 4 little color squares. The dial gauge. The dial gauge is the classical representation of any analog value, no matter if a dimmer value or a temperature or wind speed has to be indicated. Additionally, 3 colored ranges can be defined by up to 4 limit values. Optional, the scale can be numbered with up to 25 intermediate linearly distributed values. All visible elements can be freely colored in the style area. Here, the gauge elements can also be made transparent between 0, full transparency, and 1, fully covering the background. The value itself can also be displayed in the bottom center. Depending on the data type, the min and the max value to be displayed can also be set. On the web page, the gauge looks as follows. The matrix element. As last item in this group, we have a look at the matrix element. This element is very versatile as regarding indications as well as sending control values. The name already implies it. You define a matrix of control values and assign them sensible icons. When you open this control element, you will see all of these icons and you can choose from them. On the other hand, these icons would pop up if an external telegram updates the process point. You can use it for any data type, but the main application is to show analog status values using sensible graphical icons. The matrix element, therefore, is also designed for control and feedback of room temperature operation modes and for a multi-stage fan control. For these 2 options, there are already a number of pre-designed elements available. Now let's look at the specific configuration details. Properties. Update. This flag makes the indication icons change according to external control or status feedback. If not ticked, the icon changes only with the control on the web page. The possible value indication, however, is not linked with this update flag, so it will always show the true status of the KNX device which is controlled. Unknown status. Since you can't define a continuous assignment between all values in the range and icons, you must define what is displayed if the defined values are not exactly hit. Higher range means that the icon of the next higher value will be displayed, lower range vice versa. Unknown displays the unknown status. And don't show nothing. Now let's jump to sending elements. With the plus button, you add elements, with minus, you delete them. When you have selected one of the elements, in Sending Element General, you can define its order number. Make sure not to have double numbers. Sending Element Status. Here you do the configuration as you know it already for any other element. In my example now, I want to visualize the external lux value plus the rain indicator. So first of all, I need some self-designed icons for weather situations, which I had drawn before. Now, before I can proceed with my assignments of graphical icons, I have to define the link to the proper data point. In my case, I choose a virtual data point for lux value. Unknown should always indicate the higher range icon. Then I define the display ranges. The display ranges are somehow logarithmic. They start at 0 lux and they end with 110,000 lux. After that, you have to assign the suitable icons to all these sending values. Here I can test my work, which I have finished already, using a virtual data point with a slider. As you can see here, I changed the value manually, and the icons displayed also change with the value. There is never any gap in the indication. In my example, I also want to show if it rains on the same place. This can't be integrated in one single matrix element, but must be superimposed with a regular 1-bit status element. It is invisible as long as it doesn't rain. Actually, I have stacked 3 elements on top of each other in order to have the numeric lux value reading always visible. Because the rain icon would hide it otherwise, I have copied the matrix element without the icons but with the visible values and put it on top of the others. IP camera. Beside the option to integrate webcams via call of external URLs, you can also use a special component for the integration of internal IP cameras. This element is new in version 3. You move it like the other components in the Advanced section onto your workspace to the desired position and zoom it to the desired size. In the toolbar, you must configure the connection settings. Host IP. The IP address of the camera in the local network. Port, access port as designed for the camera, very often port 80. Username, self-explanatory. Password, also self-explanatory. Format, here it must be defined if the camera produces still images, JPEG, or movies, MJPEG. The path finally is the directory where the camera deposits the images or movies to be shown and where the IPCC can fetch the data stream from. Hint: a maximum of 5 active cams are supported by the IPCC, so an alert will be displayed as soon as more than 5 IP cams are dragged onto one page. You can use more than 5 cams, but distributed on different pages. Then you must make sure that these different pages never will be active at the same time in different browsers. HTML chart module. With the chart module, up to 10 values can be tracked through a time range of maximum 1 year. They can be shown in a two-dimensional graphic, either as a line or as a bar chart with various configuration options. The component must be dragged out of the advanced category onto the page and zoomed to the desired space. The configuration of the chart starts with properties. Show data types means that you will see all value pairs in a small pop-up box when you move the mouse over the bars or lines. Show legend means that for each value the corresponding information will be shown in the footer. Next block is style. Here most important is the title. We proceed to series. Here you define the chart type and how many charts you want to see in the same diagram. The graphs can be moved to front or back and deleted again. When choosing a series, under General, the name must be entered and the database chosen. That means which process point is used. There are only process points to connect if you have created them in the add-on module charts. How to do this is explained in the chapter Add-on modules. In properties of the series, the method of calculation and value storing has to be defined. Average, minimum or maximum. To choose the right method is important because it can't be changed at runtime later anymore. Line defines color and form of the graph. Segment means straight line parts with hard direction changes. Curve means continuous bent ones with smooth direction changes. The item is the point on the curve where a real value exists. 4 different forms: box, circle, cross, and diamond are possible. Size, color, and filling option must also be chosen here. X-axis, the tick, the line, and the default display range are to be set up here. The display range, however, can also be altered in the web page later. Y-axis. The first entries are similar to the X-axis, the others mostly self-explanatory. Make sure to have the scale properly set and to be the expected values not exceeding the minimum-maximum range. I put up the wind speed here between 0 and 30 meters per second with 1 decimal place. Grid lines. The existence and the properties of grid lines can be set up here. Audio-video elements. In this category, again, we have mainly new icons, but also in most cases simple 1-bit control. Beside the frequency slider, which uses normally an 8-bit object, and it is derived from the normal slider. But as with almost all the other controls, it is possible to use different data types and to set up the proper control value in status.